Nigeria as a country is a contraption of contradiction. By principle, we operate a federal constitution, a federal system of government by the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended. But in practice, we have what is called a unitary system of government whereby too much of the power seems to be at the center.
For the longest part of Nigeria's political history, the nature of the political system has always been questioned, and in the last 3 decades, the calls for constitutional reviews or restructuring have dominated the public discourse. Nigeria today, though a federal republic, is being described by many pundits as a unitary state. The military incursion in governance through the first coup of 1966 was the start of dominance by the center.
Look at what was happening in the 60s, 70s. That was really federalism. The military destroyed federalism in this country. Ironsi, as a president, brought the unification decree that destroyed federalism. And that was before he came, there was real federalism in this country. Control of resources by wherever it came from. So why do we kill what is right and adopt what is wrong?
Sir Ahmadu Bello was not interested in going to Lagos. That's what Tafawa Balewa was to Lagos, because the power was in the north and the premier of the northern region, Obafemi Awolowo, with Zeke, because all the powers were within these regions. But with the first military coup, starting from even the Wheeling Commission of the 1950s of minority agitation, because this is not a recent thing, because prior to independence, minority groups across the country, even within these regions, were marginalized. In the north, the Middle Belt Congress was a byproduct of the dominance of the northern House of Fulani kind of hegemony. But the point is, with power now during the military regime and then the structure we have of 36 states, the further disintegration of Nigeria, and then absorbing the power to the center has led the center to be more attractive.
Since the return of Nigeria to democracy in 1999, politicians have dangled the restructuring carrot every election cycle. The ruling party, the All Progressives Congress (APC), for example, has been accused of riding on restructuring to gain electoral victory. Since coming to power, however, the presidency has insisted a few times that the restructuring agitators are not clear in their demands. Indeed, different groups have raised distinct issues to be considered in restructuring. For some, creation of additional states. For others, devolution of powers. And for some others, it is about resource control. There is, however, a common thread running through the demands.
Let's look at in terms of representation. Because when people talk about restructuring, it's about understanding the principle of federal character. How do we involve the federating units in the management of the state? Let's take the security apparatus of Nigeria, the control of the security mechanism. Does it reflect federal character? Let's look at the Economic Council of Nigeria. Does it reflect federal character? Does it reflect the composition of the federating units? So these are the reasons why critics have advocated. And there is a need for us, because we have been on this particular system, and what is the result that we have gotten for this system? You know, Zig Ziglar said, for us to do the same thing the same manner and expect to get a different result is the beginning of insanity. There is no way, as long as we still have this structure, we will have a culture of mediocrity. Because there's no accountability in this system. You don't allow the federating units to have a say in how they are being governed.
You see, this is the very fantastic structure that we have, a federalist system. But the key issue is about participation. We can give example from what we have today in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. When you look at the service chiefs, the police, and all other security agencies, no single Igbo person, and you say he's from Nigeria. The issue of participation does not suggest that each and every one out of the over 300 ethnic identities must be at the center level. That's why when you devolve the power, the center will not be that attractive.
But in the case of Nigeria, it's worrisome because we wouldn't have reached this point. What is happening now is what has happened repeatedly over history in Nigeria. Recall that even before, immediately after independence, it was the northern part that actually wanted to break away. Historically, it's there. They were the ones who wanted to leave. Until one thing gave right to another to another. Agri-Runsi, a number of people were killed, and then Gowon came on. They now were a bit relaxed because they now felt that somebody from their side, which tells you that these ethnic politics didn't start today in Nigeria. They're relaxed. And they continue. And then after the Civil War, you now saw what happened. Gowon came with his tripartite system of Victor Novanquist and rehabilitation, this and that, which you know how it was operated till the end of it and so on. So it's been there, this agitation has been there, largely because we have had over the years a skewed polity. Skewed polity structurally as a nation. In fact, our nationhood is not even defined. I still remember the poem I did following Professor Wole Soyinka's paper he gave sometime in the 1990s, which he entitled When is a Nation? Which tells you we're not a nation. Neo Shundara, also a Nigerian poet, in one of his books I have here, he says, discussion with my country. He said he wanted to say discussion with my nation. He said, but Nigeria is not a nation yet. I said discussion with my country. Why? There is no sense of belonging across the board in this country. We believe that some people are meant to hold the cow while others milk it. And the moment you have that kind of skewed mentality, it will naturally not go well for the polity. And so that is why it's as if we'll be talking about restructuring of the polity. You restructure something that is faulty. And we know the fault lines of Nigerian federalism. Do we even implement the constitution? We implement it in the breach. That's the truth. The so-called quota system we operate, or federal character thing we operate, how do we implement it? We implement it skeletally when it favors me. And that is why somebody from one part of the country, when it comes to an examination, he has to score something higher than another. And then someone who scores very low can get admission, while somebody who didn't. That is skewed federalism.
The APC government, in the end, set up a restructuring committee, led by the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai. They made some far-reaching recommendations, but the report they submitted continues to gather dust. On record, most of the calls for restructuring have been from individuals and groups from the southern part of Nigeria. So I asked if the North is against restructuring.
The people they are talking about that have monopolized power are the ruling class, the elite at the top, not the Nigerian people. For what is the benefit of power in General Buhari's government to the poor man in the north? Tell me, what did you get from him? You are a journalist, you observe, you've talked to people. What has President Muhammadu Buhari's government done to the peasant farmer in Daura, where he comes from? Odigachkun, where I come from? Osolawa, where your grandfather comes from? They haven't benefited from it. So it's a collection, it's a government for a small people benefiting small people. So why should the North, the average Northerner be afraid of restructuring? What is he afraid of? What is he going to lose again by doing what is right?
from independence to date, northern Nigeria dominates the political landscape at the federal level, even from the military. But what has that power benefited the majority of people in northern Nigeria? So it's not about power. But if you have the elites that have the consensus, like trying to chase the military from 1999, because during Abiola's attempt, people were not talking about religion because it was a Muslim ticket. But because there was consensus among the elites, because that was not a religious issue, but people needed change. But now what we have is that people just talk about interest, and then you look at it, the power has been in the North for quite some time, the power from 2015, but the North are suffering more. So it's not about competence. So once this elite consensus is not arrived at, people now station back to their own regional, ethnic, and religious kind of support. And then at the end of the day, the idea is about the power in the center, because all the powers has been concentrated at the center.
Take, for example, what is the quarrel all about? The quarrel is all about resource control, isn't it? That's the quarrel. Now, true federalism that this country, Nigeria, practiced in the 60s, gave people the right to control their resources. If I remember, I think it's in terms of the formula, it's about 50% to the place where the resource came from. So what was wrong with that? The military changed this. It's not the northerner that changed it. It's the military as an institution. General Yakubu Gowon did not represent Pangshin. Didn't come to power because he was from Pangshin. He came to power because he was a general. General Olusegun Obasanjo didn't come to power because he came from Abeokuta. He came to power because he was a general. The same thing with General Ibrahim Badamaso Babangida from his state. He didn't come to power because somebody elected him. He came to power because he was wearing the uniform. And they had an interest as a class. The top brass of the military and the top elites in this country are in the same club.
Resource control and revenue allocation are major bones of contention in the restructuring agenda. I sat with Professor Pat Utomi, a renowned political economist, who says states have no business collecting revenue from the center if the country is to thrive.
Every conversation around restructuring that you hear from people generally is about revenues. Those in the oil producing areas, we're entitled to so much percentage. The thing comes from our place. Those from outside oil producing, no, it is everybody's own. That's the basis of all that thing you hear. That's all. Who will get revenues? When I tell you it's ignorance, it is from the fact that no nation in human history that I know of has grown rich from revenues. Nations get wealthy from production, not revenues. It's like the lottery effect. Show me a poor man who won the lottery 10 years after. I will show you somebody who's poorer than he was when he won the lottery. That's what's happening today in Nigeria. I have argued that most of the money should be saved. We don't share this oil revenue, we save most of it. Take a little of it to service our budget process, but you run your budget based on taxation from what you produce. We would have a healthy, prosperous country if that was the logic. So we've made a vote for revenues over production. And so we stay poor. And we're going to continue to be poor until we understand that basic logic.
According to Professor Utomi, there is no state of the Federation that is not endowed with both human and natural resources.
And if they can structure society to run along, taking that endowment, using limited industrial policy, even education system around that area to facilitate output from those endowments and dominate certain global value chains, you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed how everybody can prosper. Take one of my favorite examples. North Central. Vast, open territory, sesame seeds are there in the wild. They make soup with the thing. I mean, this thing that you're eating soup with, you know that he can actually teach every kid in primary school in Benue the value chain of sesame seeds. And they will learn to grow it. They will learn to harvest it in the most efficient way. Yield per hectare is so much. They will learn to process it, and they will learn to export it, targeting every McDonald's hamburger chain in Europe, the oil, the this, the that. And by the time they are 25 years old, with or without degrees, they can be sesame seed value chain tycoons.
From the mounting insecurity to disturbing unemployment rate, collapsing economy, and failed education, how will restructuring solve Nigeria's hydra-headed challenges?
There are lots of things in the exclusive list that have to be devolved. I mean, the federal government in a federation should concern itself about the territorial integrity of the country, custom, immigration, the military, for example, and all that. But things like policing, yes, you can have a central, this thing like the FBI in the US that delve into aspects that have to do with the whole federal system. But at the state level, you have state police that would take care of issues of the state. In fact, even during the British colonial, rule, that's what we had. We had NA police and Nigerian police. Well, I grew up, I'm getting to 70 anyway. I grew up knowing that there were some people with short knicker, green was it, or something like that. They have their socks up to this length, and they are called NA police. They move around with button, and they were the ones in charge of security. And then you hardly see the Nigerian police moving around your locality, but the NA police is always there with you. So it was there. It is the military that came and abolished such things and then had a centralized. So it is necessary to devolve these powers. And the National Assembly can do that like that.
Just to give you one example, agriculture. Agriculture is the mainstay of Nigerian economy up to tomorrow. It contributes higher than oil and gas, or higher than telecommunications. And we have bastardized agriculture in this country. Growing up, Nigeria was a net exporter of food. I'm talking about early 70s. We import virtually everything that we eat today, that you eat as part of the elite and ruling class in this country. The rice you eat is imported. In fact, the beans you eat may possibly be from Nigeria Republic. So basically, the structural adjustment program of the early 80s have destroyed this agricultural production in Nigeria. So for me, if I want to see change, I want to see change that will make agriculture an economically viable activity in Nigeria. It is not today. So what has happened? What has gone wrong? We just adopted nonsensical doctrines from IMF and World Bank, which has destroyed our economy. So we need to look at it. Are they working? Are the policies that we have brought about as a consequence of structural adjustment as it relates to agriculture, are they working? They are not. There is no economy in the world that doesn't subsidize agriculture. American economy subsidizes agriculture. European Union subsidizes agriculture. Japan subsidizes rice production. What do you do to the Nigerian farmer? The only subsidy in quote is in perhaps fertilizer, which hardly gets to him. Basically because what we were doing right, we stopped it. Growing up, for example, the farmers of cotton, groundnut, cocoa, palm kernel knew exactly what they would sell their produce in at the end of the season. Even before planting cotton, grade 1 per pound, you know what you will sell. Because there were marketing boards that stabilized prices, that enabled that they buy, they grade, and they sell. We abolished them under the structural adjustment program. we allowed free market. How can you have a free market in an economy that is peasantry?
Revenue allocation formula should be revised. The states and local governments should get more. The local government should be independent. Unfortunately, governors have virtually destroyed the local government system. They've seen the local governments as piggy banks. They just go and pick money from. It should not be like that. Local government should be independent. The states should have more responsibilities. More power should be devolved to the states. And then the federal government, the functions of the federal government should be reduced. Then this issue of exclusive legislative list, it's just an aberration. Why should the federal government still be in control of certain things that should actually go to the states so that the states can get more revenue to take care of their needs? You have a federal Ministry of Agriculture. I think it should be scrapped because you don't have federal farmers. Farmers are farmers. There are no federal farmers. But what do you find? You have certain interventionist schemes which should actually, the money being used to fund those intervention schemes should actually go to the states, should actually go to the local governments. Let the people feel the presence of governance in their states.
Yeah, it's problematic. And in federal system of government, that's why I said our own is a contraption. Each state has its own constitution. Do we have that in Nigeria? Each state, in actual sense, power belongs to the federating units and not the center. However, in Nigeria, power belongs to the center and not the states. And that's why I say it's a contraption of contradiction. It is the state that should be giving money to the federal government and not the federal government giving money to the state, because they are federating units. We have come together to form a federal government. That's one of the issues why Rivers State and Lagos State is at loggerheads with federal government when it comes to collection of value-added tax. Is it the responsibility of federal government to collect value-added tax, or is it the responsibility of the state? When it was put in place by Babangida administration, for example, it was said that, okay, the federal government will collect it on behalf of the state because some of the states do not have the resources and the federal government will distribute it. So, for us to really have a viral nation, it's important for us to restructure. Take too much of the power in the center and give these powers to the state. Let state generate power, for example. Let there be real system in the state. Let the local government, let's have some measure and some semblance of democracy at the local government.
At the center of this agitation is the controversial 1999 Constitution, which has been described as the take-it-all military constitution.
The space we have now, political space, we have a structure which has a federal government, a federal legislature, state governments, down to the local government. Now, our constitution as we operate now was given to us by the military. We don't have a people's constitution. People's constitution stopped in 1963. That was the last people's constitution, which was not military. Now, at that time, we had the regions operating. We are not saying we should go back to the regions. That's not what we are saying. But having come this far, we should now look at it. What is the federating unit? I mean, based on the situation we have, it is the state. So, we cannot change the constitution unless the federal legislature do the needful, going by what we have. Unless if we are ready to do a radical departure from the whole norm and say all these things abolished, but we can't abolish everything and have a vacuum. So, what we are saying is this constitution is inimical to what we want to do or what we want to achieve, because it doesn't support true federalism. We have to get the people together to sit down and fashion out a constitution that would adopt all the aspects of true federalism so that Nigeria can work in a better way.
When people just take on the constitution and say it is the problem, it has to be discarded, I'm not convinced. Because this constitution empowers every state to legislate on education, every state to legislate on healthcare, every state to legislate on agriculture, things that concern me. The gutter in front of my house, the constitution allows the local government to clear it. The bad road in front of my house, the constitution allows the local government to repair the roads. Education, it is only universities and 104 unity schools that are under the federal government. We have more primary and secondary schools. In fact, primary schools are under local government in this same constitution. People talk about security. Yes. Oh, if we had state police, there will be no Boko Haram, there will be no insurgency. The Nigerian army is battling to fight Boko Haram for the past how many years? Since 2009. And the Nigerian army has not overcome them. It is state police that will overcome Boko Haram. Is it not the same human beings that are in the federal police that will be in state police? They will let every state have their own police. So a neighbor man is in Kano State, all the policemen in Kano are speaking Hausa, and you expect the Igbo man to feel very safe and secure there. Or if Fulani man comes to Anambra State and all policemen in Anambra State are Igbo, and you expect him to feel safe and secure there. The nature of our federalism, which has evolved over the years, shows that we need what I call mother hen to protect all of us. If you allow the governors to establish their police forces and operate the way people want them to operate, there's going to be serious problem in this country. My own argument for restructuring is ethical restructuring. I believe that the problem is not the constitution, the problem is not the law, the problem are the operators of the law. Some of the laws we have in Nigeria, they don't have them in the United States, they don't have them in the United Kingdom, and they are better off.
How practicable is it for the present politicians who are perceived to be the biggest beneficiaries of the current system to tinker with the nature of the political system?
I think we need ethical restructuring of this country. The major problem I keep saying is the leadership. Every country that has developed in the world is because they have good leaders. We are shouting Singapore today. There was a time they had ethnic crisis. The ethnic Chinese, this Malay, and all, they were fighting because they had limited resources and they were fighting over. The moment Singapore became prosperous, nobody remembers somebody was Chinese or Malay or anything. Nobody. They moved on with their lives. So for as long as there are only 3 bones to 4 dogs in the kennel, there can never be peace. So it is now left for the leadership. Of course, it's also enabled by followership. But there's a reason there's a leader. If not, we won't have a leader. There's a reason you are a leader. How do we think for this society? How do we love this country? How do we define policies, produce policies that will lead to economic prosperity? I can assure you that the moment the economy begins to work and there's prosperity, nobody cares.
And if they don't, what next?
Everybody wants to be a governor. Everybody wants to have motorcades, just making their country poorer. Well, okay, let's have it. Let them take what belongs to the people for themselves. But in the end, let them be careful. We saw Ceausescu, the way he was dealt with on the streets by the people. Let our politicians not assume this won't happen to them. Let them not. And I'm threatening them. Let them not. Because it can happen, and it may actually really happen to them.